the more complex the processes you're building, the harder they are to describe. And AI just gets it. We're going to see incredible levels of disruption over the next few years. I think in-house RevOps is becoming harder to have a really good reason for, because the skills you need to maintain a modern tech stack are way more than any one person has.
Welcome to Human First, the go-to-market hiring show. I'm your host, Danielle Parker, head of marketing at Captivate Talent. There is a growing problem in how companies are hiring for AI fluency right now. A lot of people have got very good at saying the right things in interviews without having actually done anything. And for founders who are not themselves technical, that gap is almost impossible to spot without the right process. Our guest today has some very specific opinions about how to close it and some equally direct views on why most companies are trying to deploy AI on a data foundation that will just not work and will never get them the real ROI from it. Tom Andrews is VP of GTM and Revenue Operations at Hivebrite and principal at TA Advisory. And he is someone who has spent his career building the systems and teams that make commercial organizations actually work. Welcome, Tom. So we caught up, I don't know, what was it, like 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
And you mentioned that you've taken your RevOps enablement team from, I think it was a team of 10 down to 2, and you do not miss the headcount.
No.
That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
So what made that possible, and what does it tell us about what the roles were actually doing before, and also how things are changing in RevOps right now?
Great question. I think there's a couple of different factors at play. So number one, a lot of teams are too big, and there's a lot of people doing things that they think are important, which, to be really frank, aren't that important anymore. The world has changed quite a lot. And when you see really overbaked process, all it does is add friction and slow things down. The most important thing in modern business is efficiency. And that's why AI has caught on so quickly. In the company I work for now and in a previous company, I've seen 70 to 80% headcount reduction within my team, but also in other teams as well. And unfortunately, it's just going to be part of the future. There are a lot of people who follow kind of tried and tested traditional methods for getting things done, but there's a reason that the old school is the old school, and there's kind of this new establishment in place of people who get things done much faster. I was watching a release yesterday of a really exciting new product, and they were talking about how it used to take a team of 5 to do what can now be done just by one person. And so if you think about people in those classical VP roles, they know all the strategy, they've got all of the great ideas, or at least they should have, otherwise they shouldn't be VPs. But anyway, that's beside the point. The bit that's really interesting is they used to need a team of managers and ICs and specialists to get things done. Now you can make a lot of that agentic. I also think that when you see big transformations in RevOps and enablement, especially, technology, regardless of whether it's AI or not, is a big part of the reason. The technology that's coming out can do things faster and better with 0 errors, and honestly, in most cases, is just a lot more effective. I recently took a 40-tab Google Sheet that is the kind of source of truth for all of the new pricing model that we've built, loaded it up into Gemini, asked Gemini to build me all of the enablement material we needed. I copied and pasted that into Confluence, which we use for all our enablement, and we were done. There's probably still things to tighten up and an FAQ to build as more questions come out, but before that would have taken people weeks to get through every single tab, digest it, understand it. I don't have to explain myself or explain what I've built to an AI, and that's crucial because the more complex the processes you're building, the harder they are to describe, and AI just gets it. The other bit that's really impressive about most of the new generation of the LLMs, they can actually describe what they're seeing. So you can upload a video of you clicking through things. It can write the walkthrough. It can give step-by-step instructions, and again, that used to take hours. People would use complex technologies like Scribe to track all the clicks, probably took a million screenshots in the process. Now you just shoot a video, the AI can write it all out and take out all of the misclicks as well.
And then it can just do it.
Exactly. It can just do it. If you're good at building out things like system prompts, so it understands your branding, your tone of voice, all of these kind of things, it makes it even easier. And suddenly you don't have to really ask the right questions. You don't need to explain what you're doing. You just tell it vaguely what you need. As long as you put a recursive prompt in to say, ask me for anything additional that you have questions on, you'll probably get a pretty good response.
Yeah. I always add also like, don't make assumptions and ask me, because that's when I feel like it errors the most
to go a bit crazy, for sure. And I think the other piece is, especially in the field I've worked in for so long, which is RevOps, we're going to see incredible levels of disruption over the next few years. I think in-house RevOps is becoming harder to have a really good reason for, because the skills you need to maintain a modern tech stack are way more than any one person has. And it's hard to hire a team of 6 people in a mid-sized company. So you've got specialties and all the different tools. I'm seeing a lot of companies start to move towards agencies. They kind of get rid of the in-house talent there. They probably just have one like killer VP in place who really understands the architecture, and all the IC talent is on a rotating bench through an agency, because that way you can get the skills that you need
at the time that you need them.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's really interesting. I think like RevOps specifically is in a really interesting time with AI, because I've had a lot of these conversations recently with different RevOps leaders, because we're launching this guide to hire AI fluent RevOps talent, and finding that RevOps is like the ground floor.
Yeah.
Because for all of these things to work, you need that like structured data. Things need to be clean. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about what you think like the RevOps role is moving towards. Like obviously lower headcount, but like what is the mandate within the organization now, do you think?
If you don't mind, we'll start with a little bit of history. So,
Love that.
So sales operations was a term first coined by Xerox in 1970, and sales operations started in the world of supply chain. So I started my career at Hewlett Packard, learned loads about silicon and ordering silicon, and that was sales operations at the time. It evolved more and more into digital businesses and into digital supply chains, which is really when RevOps came about. RevOps, in its essence, should be the entire ecosystem from when someone lands on your site to the moment they pay you, and ideally keep them paying through recurring revenue. But a lot of people in RevOps don't come from the backgrounds that are aligned to the skill sets needed in the future. A lot of them will have been salespeople who were very good at explaining process, who went into sales enablement, then advanced into leading RevOps. Or they'll have a background in sales itself. They might have been in forecasting. I've seen people with finance backgrounds. And don't get me wrong, there is a place in a RevOps team for all those different skill sets. But the leaders who are needed for tomorrow are probably people with backgrounds in complex engineering, computer science, or these days AI. Still pretty rare you find someone who really has worked in AI their whole career, but they should at least have been familiar with it before it got super popular. I always joke to people I was studying AI 15 years ago when I was at university, and people are like, oh my God, AI existed then? I'm like, of course it did. Machine learning has been around for 40 years.
Yeah. Did you guys use like AIM over here and have like Smarter Child?
Yes.
With a little...
Yeah, it was some kind of AI for sure. We just think of it differently now.
Yeah.
And really what everyone talks about as AI is most commonly an LLM. So I think that when we look at what RevOps needs to become, they really should be people who can really lead in this world of AI. But at its core, they need to be data engineers and data architects. They need to take the revenue data and they need to build structure and categorization and allow it to be feature engineered in such a way that people can really run great algorithms on it, and where the AI can really use it to do something useful. One of the things that's so interesting about all these companies that are becoming more and more AI centric is cost. You know how good their RevOps team is or how well built their data is from the cost. Because if something like Claude, as smart as Claude is, has to go to 50 different silos to get all the data, you will have just spent most of your like daily limit of tokens in a really clean org that has well-built markdown files and signposts and probably a context layer. It might be able to do it with a fraction of the tokens. And so as companies move more and more towards this world of AI everything.
Yeah, token max.
Exactly. The cost is going to be the next thing that they're maxing. And
I think we're already seeing that.
We really are. We're seeing like Uber saying that they
like,
use. Yeah. I actually spoke to someone a couple of weeks ago at a conference who told me that they replaced like 60% of their team with AI, ended up costing more than the team did. And so they were hiring humans again. And I couldn't help but laugh.
Yeah.
It was such an interesting like break to the narrative that we see.
Yeah.
I also think we're in such a bubble in the world of SaaS and technology.
We really are.
I speak to people from more traditional industries, and I'm really fortunate that in my advisor role, I get to work with people who aren't in SaaS. And AI to them is still just this thing they need to think about in a couple of weeks' time. It's not like something that they're rushing towards.
We're all like, it's the end of the world.
Exactly. We're all
what's happening?
We're all like terrified our jobs are going to be taken tomorrow. And they're like, yeah, I think that AI thing could help. And it's just so interesting to see how much of it is like the LinkedIn
hype.
Exactly,
bubble.
the hype machine running. Because the other thing that kind of Clay through LinkedIn has really popularized is GTM engineering. I think recently said on a webinar, GTM engineering is just what RevOps could be if all the RevOps people had the right backgrounds. And even GTM engineering is mostly focused on outbound, which is a tiny fraction of the world of RevOps. So it's getting really hard out there to be a RevOps leader. I think a lot of companies are also still paying the tech debt that they created in the last few years.
Yeah.
They are in a really difficult position for hiring top talent because you don't want to be one of these like AI first RevOps leaders and go into a company where you need to shovel coal for 2 years to clean it up.
Right.
I've definitely been into roles where I got there and I was like, oh, I can't do any of the fun stuff because
you're like, I can't do this. Yeah, I can't do this yet. You need someone to like that. And that's also like a misalignment in hiring because they're like, oh, we want someone to do all this cool stuff, but like the house isn't in order.
Absolutely. And you can't do all of the cool stuff efficiently or effectively until the baseline is done. The other problem is some companies unleash AI on like all their employees with zero context, zero system prompting, zero guardrails. And all you do is create mess faster.
You could create more of that like tech debt.
Yeah, like, it's like a vicious cycle, except it's just crappy data, bad outcomes, high token use. We recently looked within one of the companies I work for at the token usage outside of the product and engineering team. And all of the people using a lot of tokens are not the people in roles where you would expect them to be. And when you really drill into it, there's probably more inefficiency in what they're doing than I personally would like. My name wasn't even there because I use Gemini and most of the company uses Claude. Gemini is included in most people's Google Workspace and you can now customize Gemini with persistent memory. So my Gemini is like tricked out and knows all about me. So I use it a lot more. I think Claude is awesome. I use it for co-work. I use it for Claude Code, but I don't use it like as my everyday LLM. That's where I use Gemini. We also use Dust, which is an agentic platform, builds agents, very cool, very up and coming. I think it was originally founded in France.
What's it?
Dust.tt. Very cool. Has access to all the big LLMs, but you can build specialized agents. Really nice. But I've already just named 3 different platforms that do largely similar things in different ways, for sure. And you can see how hard it's becoming, even just for day-to-day employees, to navigate this morass, let alone trying to lead through it. That's very difficult because for a lot of RevOps leaders, they're still learning with everyone else. There's not a lot of people who have a background in this or who've done it before.
Yeah. And there's a lot, I feel like on our team, even there's a lot of tool fatigue of like, this new thing, this new agentic thing. And you get like, we switched the team over from ChatGPT to Claude. Yeah. And I'm the admin and I was going through and I was just like, oh my God, like, why are we out of like extra usage? And then I like basically like uploaded the thing, like obviously you can't see anyone's like chats, and it did this analysis. It was like, okay, what's likely happening is that like there was one guy on our team, he had used like $500 in extra tokens, and it was like, oh, like he's just continuously in one chat, which re-uploads the context and it like, uses a ton of tokens. And so then I told him, I was like, hey, like just start a new chat. And it went way down, but it, just like that, there are little things we're not used to.
Totally.
It's a whole different way of thinking.
Totally. And like, if you're working with anything complex with code, the trick is to get Claude to be consistently updating a markdown file and then using that as context in new chats roughly every 5 messages so that you keep it all streamlined. The consistent context is through the markdown, and that is a lot less busy than like a whole chat being re-uploaded.
Yeah.
But most people don't know that. And even if they've learned like the tricks, it still is very complicated. And there's not a ton of great AI enablement out there.
No.
And often AI enablement is being run by people who learned it quite recently. It's not like they've got the years of experience. I also think the goals in different levels of the organization are really misaligned. Like, I speak to a lot of executive teams or boards where they obviously want to increase the capacity of every existing employee, maybe remove headcount, make the organization structure more efficient. For the individuals, they don't want to be superseded by AI. They want to prove that they're really great with AI. So if people do lose jobs, it's not them. But what they take their eye off is their actual goals. I see a lot of people who have started to miss the goals that they are bonused on or tracked on or that define their performance because they're learning to use AI. And if the AI isn't achieving their actual goals, then they're just playing.
It's kind of classic, like, second order effects where it's like
100%.
You're being told you're going to be replaced if you don't learn how to use this thing, but it's like just learning it just to learn it versus, okay, how is this actually going to be most effective in helping me achieve those goals, which is what I need to do.
Exactly.
Versus just learn AI and token max and
it's such a positive echo chamber once you're like in the LLM itself. Everything you do, it's like, this is such a great idea.
Yeah, it's like, wow, Danielle, you're amazing.
Exactly. It's like, oh my God, you're the second coming.
Yeah.
Like, you really know this. But in reality, I can't speak for you yourself, but what some people are doing is like super basic. And so they are then like, oh my God, I'm so incredible at this. I've built the best agent ever. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah. You like missed all of the principles of prompt engineering. You've not built any kind of markdown context. You have no context layer, no translation layer. You've got no consistency. And they're like, oh, but Claude said it was great. And it's like, Claude says everything is great.
Claude does, like, Claude lies a little bit.
Yeah. Gemini constantly tells me how amazing I am. And I have to be like, I know this is wrong.
Yeah. And it's like, no, like, you were wrong there. And it's like, oh, right. I am so sorry about that. And it's like, okay. I think that's a really good segue into my next question, which is a lot of people, not just in RevOps, but like in this world we're in at large, have gotten really good at using the buzzwords around AI. I think, just to be fair, it's almost like Dunning-Kruger, where you like think you're at this different level, but it goes so far beyond that. And, you know, what does that look like in practice? And how do you spot someone who's like actually learned to perform versus someone who's just kind of has the right words? Yeah,
it's a really, really good point. I say quite a lot, everyone can say all the right words. The thing to look out for is whether they say them in the right order. I've sat in a couple of interviews in the last probably 12 months where I've almost had the sense that you get when you see an image that's not quite real, but you're being told it's real and your brain is like, alert, this is not real.
Yeah, it's just like,
you know, that like almost tingling. I get that in what they're saying in their interview because they say all the right words. And if you're not listening out for it, it sounds like they really know what they're talking about. But then you're like, wait, what? Because it didn't actually make sense. It was kind of a word vomit, but it's getting super difficult. I mean, these things are so fast now. You could be sat on a virtual interview typing and the person that you're speaking to might not know. And it can be throwing up all the answers like in real time. I think you've got to get practical. You've got to really dive into use cases. You've got to look at the things that they've actually done. References are more important than ever. And not just those 5-minute chats where you're like, are they a good person?
They're like, yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah. It's like, tell me about a time they actually hit their goals. Like, what was their average performance? What percentage of their bonus were they getting paid? And some of these questions people just aren't ready for because they're new, but it's really difficult to know. I think it's also even more difficult to design a good interview task or a good hiring task because the ones I used to use, I think if you uploaded them to Claude would probably give it a pretty good crack. And so the trick I started using is vagueness. I will be incredibly vague in the interview task. And one of the things I'll be looking for is them to ask me clarifying questions. Because if you ask a very vague question to Claude, it will start hitting you with clarifying questions. And so I've also just said that Claude could probably do my new interview tasks, but at least it's getting someone to think through the questioning, hunt for the information, find the information. The second piece is, they're going to be using AI, so get them to use the AI to do something that's different or useful. In RevOps, the presentation of data, to me, is one of the art forms that's still mostly misunderstood. The type of chart you use for different data is descriptive, and it really should add to the narrative. If you use the wrong chart type, you lose all sorts of context. I don't think AI is that great still at choosing the perfect chart type.
Yeah.
The other bit I really look for is formatting, which is so old school, but a well-formatted slide deck generally doesn't come from the LLMs.
No.
And a lot of them, you can tell when it's if it's a Claude generated deck, it has the same there's the same echoes. I don't know. Yeah. It's got the same lines or the same curved corners on the boxes.
Random words are italicized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I also ask for people to share the deck with me, not as a PDF, so then I can see if it's an image. All of those are getting more and more almost necessary to really pierce through what they're doing. On the flip side of it, the thing that's crazy is some people who write really good prose, the prose that they've written is starting to get detected as AI, because the AI is assuming humans can't write good prose anymore. And so
I think I saw someone literally upload a passage from the Bible, and it was 100% AI.
Yeah.
We were just okay.
This is probably plagiarism.
Yeah.
Well, fair if it was plagiarized off the Bible. But it is getting really difficult, and there's no one size fits all approach to it. I think it's going to get more and more difficult, and that will make the age-old rule of it's not what you know, it's who you know, even more important, unfortunately, because you need people who legitimately know that you've got an important skill set and that you've got almost a back catalogue of success. I think everyone is going to start having a portfolio. You know how an artist would have a portfolio.
So easy to make now, too.
Exactly. And so I've started looking at my LinkedIn as a portfolio. How do I change it so that it's about, I did this and it drove this outcome, this and it drove this outcome. Then those are things that can be verified in reference interviews. And that's a quick way of kind of being here's the outcomes I can guarantee I've driven before. Hopefully it means I can also get you the outcomes in this other role. I
actually have friends from a former company when I was at Profitwell building a tool for this now. It's called
Very
Trove,
cool.
where it's you explain the impact you've made in artifacts, and then you get it verified by your manager
That's
or someone else, and they can leave contact or comments, which I think is really interesting in this world where everything can look perfect.
Yeah. It's almost like social proof.
Exactly. It's they're calling it your career proof. We talked about this a couple weeks ago when we were catching up around this version of the AI executive that just sends 20-page briefs that no one needs, that then everyone else uploads to their AI and gets the bullet points, and then it's just the worst game of telephone ever.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between someone who's using AI well versus someone who's just adding that noise? Because as you said, AI makes it so much easier to just look really productive and make a ton of noise, but not necessarily be actually helpful.
I think the real skill set as an executive in the modern era, let's call it, is asking great questions. And that's not something that AI is wildly good at. It can give you questions to ask, but they're not necessarily super penetrative. And so what I've started encouraging people to do is to perfect the question first, because you can still ask that question to the AI and get your 20-page document. I've got no problem with the 20-page document. I won't read it, but if it makes you feel good, go for it. I think what's really important, though, is that the prompt and the framing at the very beginning really gets into the challenge that your business is facing and is deeply contextualized to the problem. So the question could start off with, why did we miss the sales target? Well, that is a terrible question to ask. Why did we miss the sales target last quarter? We started to contextualize it with time. Why did we miss the sales target last quarter in the pharmaceutical vertical, and you start to build it up, and it might be that you end up with a list of questions, but if you give that to Claude and Claude has access to the MCP of your CRM, suddenly you will get a deeply contextual report, probably with some charts that might not be the exact visualization I would choose, but they'll be decent.
Yeah.
And it will actually
correct.
Exactly. It will tell a story and it will give you a narrative. That's way more valuable than drivel. And so often Claude makes tons of assumptions through no fault of its own, but because it's filling in the gaps that someone didn't give it. The other bit I find deeply frustrating is when one person has a question and they generate a 20-page document. Someone else reads the 20-page document,
Uploads it to their...
Exactly. And then they create their own version. And then what I saw recently is two people create 20-page documents and their boss bring them together and add their own context layer. And now how is the decision made between the three? Like, do we upload all three of them and ask for a difference analysis? Like, what a waste of everyone's time. What should have happened in that scenario is all those three people figured out what is the question they're trying to answer. And if they all agree on the question, then they should together kind of send that through to the AI, get the 20-page document, do one set of reviews between them all and refine it from there. And so I really think that the people who are getting it right are making sure that the interrogation is done up front, not at the end of the cycle, not on the 20-page document, but on the prompt. But it is very true that there are companies now where someone gives Claude a list of bullet points, it writes a 20-page document, someone else uploads it to their own LLM and gets a list of bullet points back. Just send each other the bullet points.
Yeah, just send the bullet points.
Yeah, it's quicker for everyone and it uses a lot less tokens.
That's funny. I think, and we were just kind of touching on this around, and I've also been having a lot of conversations around this, around like case studies and take-home exercises. Again, everything looks perfect and you're making yours like intentionally vague. And I was talking with Mark Roberge at, oh God, now I can't remember the name of his firm, but he was former CRO at HubSpot. He was saying, he's like, I want the people I'm interviewing to use AI. Because they're going to use it in the job. So I want to see how they use it. But then it's like, you have to interrogate that a little. So what is your kind of thought process around that besides making it vague? Like, how do you assess for that? How has that changed?
I think there's still fundamental first principles. And one of the words I love to use a lot is architecture. Like, there is an architecture beneath everything, whether it's data or it's revenue or it's your processes or even your organization. How do leaders hire great teams? Like, that's something that an AI still can't do for you. It can't hire you a great team. Like, it might be able to help you sift candidates, but it doesn't mean that culturally they'll all work together. It doesn't mean their skill sets are complementary to each other. Also, how do you think about explaining the process to your organization? How do you get people on board? How do you share your vision? How do you believe in the company's mission? How does all of that come together to be hopefully visionary and inspiring to your team? Those are kind of like the soft skills that are becoming more important. Anyone can learn a new programming language. I mean, you don't even need to know the language anymore. You can just get Claude to do it all for you. Anyone can learn how to fix a problem, how to get to an outcome. But I think there's still those complex skills that you should see in great leaders that should be tested for more and more and more. I think the idea of so at Sassenach, where I was a couple of weeks ago, there was a PowerPoint karaoke. So people would have to present a PowerPoint they've never seen before. I think that's so cool. And I honestly think that should become a hiring task in most interview processes for execs. Like, do you have the charisma to just pull off a slide deck? Are you able to rapidly digest things and communicate them? You could even give someone, a strategy presentation and ask how they walk their team through it, and then ask how they would explain it to the board. Because that really starts to penetrate from the people who are able to assimilate information and the people who are able to bring it to life. If Claude can put together the world's greatest strategy deck, awesome. Claude can't then go and present it to your board and answer questions.
And get the buy-in and get people to believe what it says.
Exactly. I used to sit in board meetings and the analysts from our investors would ask some of the hardest questions I've ever been asked on our data. And because I knew the data inside out, we could really, I mean, it's the most fun I've ever had. Arguing with other people about data is how I find joy. And so it's all of those skills that I think become more and more important. The other side of it is, are they just staying up to date? Have they just read all the recent press releases? Or do they have a tool they really love? And do they like work with it day in and day out and know all of its quirks? And it could be a virtual assistant. It could be just...
I love mine.
It could be like my love of Gemini because it's tricked out and it's personalized and it does everything I need. Those are the stories I think of AI that are really interesting to me because you can't just read it on LinkedIn. You've got to like truly use it day in and day out.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the next wave, is where people really deeply understand one of the platforms. Because like you said before about tool fatigue, people are getting tired of all these new buzzwords, all these new
There's
companies.
always something new. There's something
There's always a new SaaS platform that spelt their name in a creative way that drives me insane. And
got rid of all the vowels.
Exactly.
And added R at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Or now everyone's putting like .ai and I'm like, but it's not AI. What's important is that someone's got a depth of understanding in something that really makes them effective.
Yeah, I think, and to your point about like, do they actually understand what the AI is doing versus just having it do it and then being like, okay, like I can present this, but then when you like ask a couple levels below the surface level, it falls apart because you don't know how it got there.
Exactly. I recently decided to go back to university. So I'm going to be doing a postgrad in machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Cool.
And alongside that, I'm stepping back from my full-time roles and moving into advisory. The reason I'm doing all of this is because a big part of my career in the last 4 years has been AI transformation. And I think AI transformation is what everyone is going to be doing next. But I don't think I can really lead companies through that transformation unless I infinitesimally understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I think the people who really want to be at the forefront of these areas, I think they're going to need to find a way to prove they've cut through the noise and get deeper into the way that these algorithms work and be able to adapt them, build them, change them, modify them. Because how can you explain something if you don't truly understand it?
Exactly. I think that's a great point. This is a really good segue on this pattern we see all the time. And we've talked about it a little bit. And I think this is your phrase, like the Frankenstein monster systems, where companies just like, they're like this tool and then this tool and this tool and this tool. And then you get this system that's just like a tangled knot of yarn. Yeah. And I also think that that's playing into companies saying that they're not really getting ROI from all of this 100%. Investment in AI. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about that. Like, what do you do? Do you fix it? Do you rebuild it? Do you hire one of these people that's going to go in and shovel the coal, as you said earlier? Like, what do you do?
I think the answer is a lot harder to stomach than most people are ready for, which is you start again. You get in one of the best RevOps agencies, you get in one of the best CRM agencies, you tell them your outcomes and you let them build you a new CRM. Because a lot of people have made so many mistakes that fixing them will be a lot more expensive than just rebuilding. Yeah. And you can even see this in some of the huge platforms. Like Salesforce released Salesforce Lightning about 5 to 10 years ago. The reason they did that is because Salesforce Classic had been built in ways that were unsustainable and they couldn't maintain. So they re-released under Lightning. Lightning is a better platform, but they cleaned it all up. And if software vendors are having to do that to these monolithic pieces of technology, of course companies need to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's a really good parallel.
Exactly. I think Frankenstein's monster is found in so many companies. At the start of my career, I joked that I specialized in distressed CRMs. The amount of time I've spent shoveling coal and trying to clean things up is crazy. And one of the things that is really difficult is there's still people who work in those companies that at the time thought it was a great idea to do the thing that led to some of that distress in the system. And that can be really hard to navigate. Management of change is difficult enough, but when you've got people who are like, well, we've always done it that way, that is a surefire way to make me want to replace you with AI. It's not about how something was done or how you got to where you are today. What's important is the outcome you're trying to achieve. Most startups, most scale-ups, even some mid-market companies are pivoting every 6 months to a year. There's no strategy anymore. They just throw everything in the air and they're like, this is what we'll do next.
Shiny.
and then they build they kind of build on top of what was already there. Yeah. Then one of the leadership team or the exec team sees this shiny new toy on LinkedIn. They get a demo. Why execs are taking demos of tools without any of their tech leaders or RevOps team, I will never know. And then they're sending a message internally like, we've got to get this. And RevOps is like, Sure, I'll bolt it on. And let's remember, VPs of RevOps are still relatively rare. A lot of RevOps leaders are director level or below. In some companies, they'll just be a manager that works for someone who's in a whole different place in the organogram, a CRO or a CEO or a CFO. So they're not going to say no.
Yeah, they can't.
Exactly. They're not going to say no. Let's not get that great tool that says it will get you 500% ROI within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then
what exec's going to say no to that?
And then they've got all these new tools that they can't get ROI from. And the exec is like, why don't you know how to set it up? Oh, I do. But all the data pumping into it is sewage.
It's all wrong.
Yeah.
I think, and that's really interesting. I'm curious because, so you start over, right? You have this whole new system. You're an architect.
Yeah.
You have a different view of how data should be structured, how it should enter. Then you take like some founders.
Yeah.
That it's a cultural change, right? It's a habit change of how you put it in and how you do it. How do you manage that cultural change between someone who's like used to being on the go and is like, I'm just going to throw it in like this and we'll worry about it later. And how do you, I guess, put guardrails against it becoming a Frankenstein's monster again? Can you?
I've only ever met one founder whose background is in RevOps, and her company's growing incredibly fast. I've worked with a lot of founders who've ignored me. I don't work for them anymore. They're not growing. I work for some founders who've really listened and really realized that my skill set sits in a whole different world to theirs. And there's been a very mutual respect, and their companies are doing really well. In fact, my first 2 exits came from companies where I'd gone in much earlier than you would normally bring in a senior RevOps person. And I'd built the scaffold. So they never built the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Yes.
They built the Eiffel Tower. We're going on a world tour of architecture here.
We really are. It's great.
And I think it's imperative that companies bring in RevOps people earlier and they start looking at architecture sooner. And if they want to be able to run fast or run with scissors, that's fine. But make sure someone has put in the guardrails and put in the barriers so you can't go too wrong. If you've not got the budget to bring those people in, a lot of us are advising now. And a lot of the agencies now specialize in architecture for high scale and high growth companies because we've all seen it go so wrong. I don't want to go into another company to fix a distressed CRM. I would much prefer to go in very early and be like, here's 8 things that you should never do. I think as companies try to get more and more and more value out of AI, the data architecture will have more and more weight put upon it. And if you ask Claude, you can do it right now. I have a complex set of systems involved in running my company. Are you able to tell me the data structure and how I should improve it? Claude will say yes, but if you really interrogate it, it will say no.
Yeah.
In a recent conversation with Claude, Claude told me that Claude itself is still 3 to 5 years away from any understanding of context engines or context engineering. Gemini said 5 to 10 years.
Interesting.
I don't use ChatGPT. I just use those 2. And so the context layer, which is what the architecture should kind of create or at least make possible, is kind of the next frontier of all of this. And there are tools starting to come out that touch upon it, but they're not AI, they're infrastructure. And so we're in this weird world where infrastructure became really unsexy. And now all of a sudden people are like, ooh, we need really good infrastructure to build AI on top.
Yeah, because you can't get to the sexy fun part without the like really boring coal shoveling of like, this needs to be in the right place for it to be useful.
Exactly. Like if you've got a markdown file of every single field and every single system mapped across each other, almost like an old ETL in BI, you will do very well. Like I recently spent a couple of days building a markdown file of all of the data in our main systems. Claude was already attached to the MCPs of those systems and was giving me what I consider like very poor answers. I uploaded the markdown file with the contextualization. Change was instant.
So much better. I'm going to have to steal that from you.
Yeah, go for it. Everyone should be doing it. Everyone needs to be building more markdown files. So
if a founder is listening and their CRM is a mess, data's all over the place, they have a little Frankenstein's monster of chaos, and they want to hire someone who's going to fix it, before they like write a job description and like go out and find the person like you that you then get there and I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. Help. What are the like 2 to 3 things they should get like really clear on first?
So number one is choose your Rome. One thing I talk about a lot at conferences is building your data Rome. All roads lead to Rome. What is Rome? If you want to have millions of tools, awesome, but you still need a brain. Like a spider has a body, an octopus has a body. They've all got all their legs going off in all different directions, twitching. It's messy, but it still has a centralized brain. What's really interesting in the octopus analogy is octopi actually have a brain in their head, which is called the crown, and in all of the tentacles, which is very much like modern operating systems. I digress. So figure out where Rome is going to be, and then figure out how much you can comfortably consolidate. Most of the tools that you're using, your core CRM can probably do 60 or 70% of it. Just get rid of them. Save yourself the money and the time and the hassle. Then hire someone with that skill set. So if you consolidate to a specific CRM, find a person who is a certified expert in that system. Although, yes, you can learn any CRM if you know a CRM, you shouldn't be hiring someone to learn. You should be hiring someone to hit the ground and succeed on day one. And when I hear of RevOps people who take 9 months to ramp up, I want to cry, because I normally leave my jobs within 9 months because I'm done.
Yeah.
I think you can create value on day one if you know the system well enough. You don't need a handover. You just read it from the system. You see all of the stuff that's going on. You then ask the questions very contextually. And so it really is all about that platform. The third piece of advice there would be, if there are really major supporting systems that are very important to the way you do business, like Clay is becoming that tool. Look for people with that skill set as well. Anyone can go and learn these tools now. There's free learning out there. Even with Claude, Anthropic made all of their training free. There's no reason anymore to hire people with 0 certifications in your stack, and it makes it so much easier just to sift. And then if you've got someone who's certified in all the platforms, you've actually got a lot less risk in the hiring process. You don't need to be as good at discerning whether they've got the skills, because they passed all the tests. They must know at least what to do with the systems to fix them.
And they made the effort to go and learn that too.
They invest in themselves. The other bit is, generally speaking, don't worry about hiring someone who's got the strategy and the architecture. You don't need a full-time person who can do that. You can get that from advisors, from board members, from investors. Get someone who can sit every day and just make your systems more efficient and shiny. You want a shiny system, not Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, I love that. That's going to be the takeaway. I think, the one thing that really landed for me in this episode was around the mess of data. And you're not going to get to, we've all been promised so much with AI of what it can do for marketing teams, for go-to-market, for sale, all of this stuff. But the foundational layer, you have to get right, and you have to make that investment. And sometimes that's going to be painful. Yeah,
it is. And sometimes you should give your company the grace to go and invest in cleaning up the data over there. You can still run the business that you're running. You don't have to stop. You don't have to close the doors. But you can have people who are just focused on kind of cleaning it up for the future. And don't be afraid to do that, because although it's an investment now, it's a long-term efficiency saver. We talked about it earlier, but the number one thing people need to remember is AI will only get more expensive. Claude's prices will only go up. I'll be amazed if they go down, especially with the complexity of building these data centers. It's more than likely just going to keep going up. Efficiency has always been super important, but it's even more important now, because the less tokens you use, the cheaper, but it doesn't necessarily reduce the output or reduce what you can get. It just means you've got a better design system overall.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us today live in London. This was so great. I'm very excited for this episode to come out.
I can't wait to see it.
I know, yay!